Good evening, Nigeria, and welcome to yet another edition of Electricity Town Hall, a program being sponsored by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission (NERC), aimed at keeping consumers of electricity abreast of happenings in the nation's power sector. This program comes your way every Monday on the network service of Radio Nigeria in the evening, 7 o'clock. NERC is the regulator for the nation's power sector, interfacing with electricity generation companies known as GENCOs, the Transmission Company of Nigeria (TCN), and the distribution companies (DISCOs). I'm David Umar Yoranka. The Nigerian electricity supply industry (NERC) is a framework for electricity generation, transmission and distribution in Nigeria. It's a critical sector that plays a vital role in Nigeria's economic development, fueling industries and improving the standard of living. However, the NERC faces ongoing challenges such as providing reliable and affordable power to a growing population. One area that has remained critical has been the distribution sector, where consumers are given electricity and in turn required to pay for services rendered. Owing to issues surrounding electricity supply, consumption, bills, electricity theft, consumer protection, compliance and enforcement, the federal government has introduced several initiatives geared towards protecting the consumer, while also providing the investor the enabling environment to get returns on their investment. And today we'll be looking at market implications of MYTO, talking about the multi-year tariff order. How important is MYTO in the marketplace, and to what extent can this be leveraged to engender a more profitable power sector? These and more will be interrogated tonight on Electricity Town Hall as we look at the multi-year tariff order in the Nigerian electricity supply industry (NERC). And of course, I've got the team right here in the studio: a Principal Manager, Economic Regulations Division of NERC, Dr. Mohammed Yadudu. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us.
Also, a Senior Manager from the Economic Regulations Division of the Commission, Mr. Onu Agbonika. Thanks for joining us, too.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
And of course, we have the only woman in our midst. They say reserve the best for the last. They're talking about Deputy Manager, also from the Economic Regulations Division of the Commission, Mrs. Blessing Kaigama.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're all welcome to the program tonight. And talking about multi-year tariff order, it's been an ongoing town hall conversation from the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. And I'll begin with you, Dr. Yadudu. For those who have not been following and are just joining, let's just talk about MYTO before we get into how MYTO affects investment in the NERC.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Incidentally, my wife was asking me a similar question, so we are in the right place, I guess.
Okay.
The multi-year tariff order is essentially a framework through which prices in the electricity industry are determined. As our listeners would probably know, the electricity industry is a regulated industry. So unlike industries such as transportation or other unregulated industries, the price that are being charged in those industries are actually regulated so that consumers are protected. So since the NERC was established, right, one of the key regulations or frameworks that was developed by the NERC is this multi-year tariff order to essentially guide the prices that are going to be charged to electricity consumers in the energy supply industry.
All right, so let's get to the question for the day now, talking about how MYTO affect investment in NERC. I know this is going to be a whole lot of technical conversation today and terminologies. So for the listener, let's try to break it down. So how does MYTO, the multi-year tariff order, affect investment in NERC?
As you rightly said, we want to break it down so that listeners out there can kind of have a sense of what we are trying to say. So I like to start with an analogy. If you're trying to buy a car to start this Uber business, right, one of the things you have to do is a kind of projection of how many rides am I going to serve within 1 year, right? You also want to know what is the price of those rides, because without knowing the prices, you really can't determine what you are going to earn over the lifetime of that car and then decide whether or not it's actually important. So this is almost exactly the same thing that you have in the electricity industry. The prices for the supply of electricity is determined by this framework, the MYTO framework. And if investors want to plan So let's say you want to build a 100 megawatt generating plant. You really want to know at what price you're going to sell that product, right? You want to know how long it's going to take you to recover those investments, similar to what you have in that Uber car. And you also want to know the payback period. So MYTO, when designed properly, as we have done in the commission, is essentially supposed to be an enabling factor that allows investors, give them an insight into what they could do if they invest in the electricity industry, so that they would know that they are earning actually a reasonable rate of return, covering their costs, while at the same time ensuring that consumers who are consuming that product are not being overcharged for that product. So essentially, it's a pricing tool that enables investors to plan into the future, to say that I want to make this investment, but what am I going to get in return if I make those investments? So that is why it's very crucial and critical that you have this framework that enables investors to actually make that investment. If I can give another example, for some of us who are a bit aged, if I may say, we could recall the instances where in the communication sector, where it used to take ages for people to actually get a phone line under the NITEL regime, right? We now had NCC, which is also another regulator, which came up with the frameworks that gave investors that insight into, okay, actually Nigeria is a good place to invest in the communication sector, and it's going to take me 4, 5, 10 years to recover my investment. So it is actually through similar frameworks that the Electricity Regulatory Commission is trying to enable investors have this pathway to recovery of their investments. And I have to emphasize the fact that we are very, very mindful of the fact that consumers are not going to be overcharged when that investments take place.
I was actually waiting for that to come in. You've been mindful of consumers here. And you talked about the investments, right? Let's get to market liquidity and cash flow. How does the MYTO affect market liquidity and cash flow?
As we had mentioned earlier with respect to the investor making that investment. So again, I would use the example of the Uber. You have bought this car, right? Uber, that you want to start doing this transportation business. Now, the liquidity of the business, that is the revenues that you are generating, is coming from the sales of your product. Now, if the price of that product is not done properly or correctly, then all your projections as to what you are going to earn when you start that business may not actually materialize. The lack of having those investment pathways achieved is what leads to this illiquidity. So I plan that I'm going to be earning 7,000 or 10,000 daily when I have an Uber car, right? But at the end of the day, I ended up having only 3,000 or 4,000. That means all my projections are essentially not totally out of the window, but what it means is that I have to take longer for me to recover my investment. So in terms of the liquidity, which is the revenues that are derived by market participants, it is the MYTO that gives them that insight. And the Commission is actually mindful of that. So there's constant revision of the MYTO to assure investors that actually you can earn enough to cover the cost of your investments, while at the same time also earning a reasonable rate of return that doesn't become very onerous on consumers.
Okay, I'm talking about the investment sector, right? Ms. Onu, I'll come to you. How does MYTO affect DISCO credit worthiness?
What it does is pricing. Basically, the MYTO centers around the pricing mechanism. Once you are not able to identify the price of a product, and then it flows down the line, your revenue is affected, the product is not being sold correctly at the right price. Now, for such case, what happens is your revenue becomes low, and when your revenue is low, it's not a bankable business, as in others cannot see it and say, I want to give you my money, I want to put in my effort, because down the line, like they say, the top line and the bottom line, ultimately what would come out of it. So without a proper pricing framework, which the MYTO delivers, you will not be able to earn your revenue, which ultimately leads to the bottom line. So once we have a fault with the top line, the revenue, ultimately the bottom line, and then in between is the expenses. Once we don't have a good price up there, it can cover the expense and deliver the profit to the investors and also to other parties, your financial institutions, those that want to give you money to do business, once they cannot see those numbers, the revenue, how is your expenses covered, what profit are you making, for how long are you even making that profit? If I give you, let me just say 100 million today, how soon and how well from your business, from that business, the electricity business, how will I be able to get that? So that is how MYTO affects the creditworthiness of discos and even other market participants in the electricity value chain.
Good enough. Talking about pricing and then having to deliver this particular product, one of the devices in the distribution chain, especially before it consumers, is the meter, where is it okay for me to say pay as you go, because it's by when you have a unit in your meter that you can use. To what extent does MYTO help in the deployment of meters?
Yes, the MYTO helps in the deployment of meters, and metering is a controversial issue, very topical in the Nigerian electricity industry.
Okay.
But the framers and the designers of the MYTO, it's like my colleague noted earlier, that is a tool for measuring investment and also returns on investment. MYTO says, how much would you need to operate this business? Oh, I need 100 naira. Oh, out of this 100, I would need this sum to meter my customer. Maybe just 2 naira out of the 100 I need. Once the pricing is not well done, what happens is that 2 naira that ought to have gone specifically to metering doesn't come into the coffers of the disco, and as such, they cannot make investment in metering. And you and I understand that the problem of estimated billing, because the meters are not there. But with a good framework like the MYTO provides, providing a means by which the discos have a particular portion of the MYTO, their pricing, their tariff, dedicated solely towards the provision of meter. Once that is rightly done, you have good money in the coffers of the discos, they can invest in metering, and with that investment, there's transparent billing, revenues are clear, customers can manage electricity at their own end, which ultimately means well for the NERC, the Nigerian electricity supply industry.
It's safe to say I'm attending a business summit right here tonight. And this is Electricity Town Hall on the network service of Radio Nigeria, a program being sponsored by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, I'm sure your ears are itching to hear from the only lady in the room here. And we should definitely be talking about the implication of MYTO on bilateral contracting. Stay with us, don't go anywhere.
This is Electricity Town Hall on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We will be back shortly.
You don't hear about service-based tariff (SBT)? This one na system wey dey make sure say the money wey you dey pay for light dey match the kind service when distribution companies, discos, dey give you. See, they put customers for band A to E depending on how many hours of light wey dem dey get every day. For example, band A customers suppose to dey get light at least 20 hours daily. With CBT, customers dey pay fair price wey match the light wey dem actually dey get, and the tariff go adjust according to the supply level wey you get. If your light outage pass the limit wey dem allow, SBT go make sure say your disco compensate you and send you message for SMS and email about the service failure. Through SBT, NERC dey promote openness and better electricity service delivery. For more information, visit www.nerc.gov.ng. NERC, make light dey shine well well.
We are back with Electricity Town Hall on the network service of Radio Nigeria.
Thanks for joining us. It's still the Electricity Town Hall on the network service of Radio Nigeria, and we're discussing market implications of MYTO in the Nigerian electricity supply industry, NERC. And I've been speaking with the Principal Manager, Economic Regulation Division of NERC, Dr. Yadudu Muhammad. And also with us tonight is a Senior Manager, also from the Economic Regulations Division of the Commission, Mr. Onuagbonika, and a Deputy Manager from the Economic Regulations Division of the Commission, also Blessing Kaigama. Thank you all for your wonderful contribution so far. Welcome to the second half of this conversation. And as I told you earlier, if you're like me, I've learned a lot, more like a business summit here. And beginning the second half is Blessing now. I'll bring this to you. What is the implication of MYTO on bilateral contracting?
That's a very good question. It forms a fundamental of where the NERC is going. And I think it will be important for us to quickly distill the model that is currently obtainable and where the market is going.
Oh, that'd be nice.
So currently we have the single buyer model, which is NBET in the middle, right? The bulk purchaser of electricity. NBET, for the benefit of those just joining us or don't know, NBET stands for the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trader or Trading Company. So NBET procures energy from, Gencos and sells to discos, right? And as a natural progression in the market, we're hoping to move to a direct contracting model where a Genco contracts with a disco, right? And now what the MYTO does is it makes that contracting possible. Again, we've established that the MYTO ensures that you recover your investments. The MYTO ensures that, fair prices are charged. And that is what, again, is going to be at play, or that's what is expected to be at play in the bilateral contracting regime, right? So say, for instance, you have an electricity distribution, let's say AEDC, for instance, contracts with a Genco down in Lagos, right? The MYTO ensures that, the prices that consumers are being, charged is fair, but then it also covers the cost of generating that electricity. It also covers the cost of distributing the electricity as well. The consumer may not even be aware, that there's that transition, again, because of the framework or the good implementation of the MYTO framework.
Because it stands as a gap to make sure that it protects the consumer as well in this case.
Fantastic, yes.
Okay, so still on that, how does MYTO now impact the deployment of renewable energy?
Good question. You would agree with me that there's this gradual transition to cleaner energy, right? Mm. And so although the MYTO is, in and of itself, is a tariff setting framework, it ensures that distribution companies source, their energy allocation from embedded renewable energy sources. I'll give you an example. The supplementary MYTO order that was recently issued mandated discos to procure at least 5% of their energy offtake from embedded renewable energy sources, right? This ensures that, there's less reliance, on the grid power. And it also ensures that, technical losses are reduced. And in some instances, you find that renewable energy sources are a bit cheaper than what is currently obtainable. Right?
What my listeners will be expecting to hear.
Which, we hope that will drive down the cost, to the final consumer. So again, that the MYTO framework makes that possible.
Doctor, you wanted to add to?
Yes, I wanted to add, while it's a waiting game, but I want the public to be assured that the mandate of NERC is to be an enabler of investment. Our mandate is to ensure that if the policy directive of the government is to transition into these renewable energy sources, that we do anything within our regulatory powers and control to ensure that that is actually happening. And like she rightly said, one of the tools that we have incorporated into the MYTO order is this mandate for discos to procure 5% of their allocations from renewable energy sources, which has been taking place. We hope to see more of this actually taking place because, as she rightly said, the more renewable energy sources you have embedded into the discos, the less reliance you have on the grid, which is very, very crucial. So anytime you hear about a grid collapse, if you have an embedded generator, the generator might still be supplying energy, so you may not be as affected. And it's also going to increase the efficiency of the discos because you have a transmission grid where energy is coming from Lagos to Kano, so definitely there will be some technical losses. But if the generation is actually being produced within Kano, then those losses are going to reduce, and some of those efficiencies are going to be passed to consumers.
Now, Mr. Ono, this is one aspect that has always generated argument, conversation, this transfer of losses to the consumer. How do you get consumers to be able to understand and then buy into this particular thing?
Thank you very much. That's an important question. Like I said, 100 units produced in Lagos.
Yes.
All you want here is 90. For me to deliver 90, 100 must
be produced.
Must. What is the cost of that 100? Now, there is the normal loss. Technically, 90 should and would be delivered down here in Abuja. Now, for one reason or the other, investments were not made, which of course MYTO seeks to address, because with the appropriate pricing, we have priced in, we have taken into consideration the fact that only 10 units of that energy should be lost, so that you can deliver 90. Your own mind is on 90, but for you to get 90, 100 must be produced. Cause and effect. I need to get 90, but 100 ought to be produced. So the cost of producing your 90 is actually 100. But anytime it goes beyond the 10 units that should be lost, it becomes the ball in the court of the discos. And the MYTO framework is designed such that when you are able to cut down these losses, the disco keeps those gains and passes down to the consumer as well. And constant monitoring by the commission ensures that losses are well coordinated such that inefficiencies of the discos are not passed down to the consumers. My colleagues will have one thing to say.
And talking about inefficiencies of discos are not passed down to consumer, Blessing, can a disco charge more than the tariff allowed for it? If this allowed, let's just do, can they charge much more than the tariff allowed to it? Because sometimes, let's say out of the 10 allowable units to be lost, 20 gets lost, and they want to recover this 20 by all means. So, are they allowed to price much more?
I think this is a burning question for every consumer, right? You want to make sure that you're getting value for whatever service that you're paying for. And incidentally, that's one of the good things or good reasons why the commission exists, right? To protect consumers and to protect market players in general. The simple answer is it's not allowed. Discos are not allowed to charge more than the allowed tariff to consumers. Now, we always encourage consumers to, do their monitoring, but we also monitor discos to ensure that they are not charging more than they should charge. And if a consumer, suspects that, they're being billed way more than the service that's been rendered to them, we encourage them to always immediately approach the commission, lay a complaint, and it will be taken up from there.
I think I like that one. Always lay a complaint once you discover that you're being charged above your normal or what you're being served, the value you get. So, Dr. Mohammed Yadudu, I think I'll end this conversation with you. How do we know if our bill is correct under MYTO?
One of the best ways of doing that is the Commission has mandated all discos to post the tariffs that they are charging each band class on their websites. And this has to be updated monthly because we also update the tariffs monthly. So one of the best ways to go about checking whether or not you are being charged the right price is to actually check the website of the disco. NERC is a very transparent organization, so any of these public orders that are sent to the disco are also posted on our website. So if that's information that you do not get on the website of the disco, you are free, honestly, to check the website of the commission for that. If that is not forthcoming, then like my colleague Blessing said, you are free to lay a complaint, and we'll definitely treat that complaint in the shortest possible time. So those are the key channels through which you can establish whether or not you are being charged the right tariff.
Can I urge you all to at least make use of some of these platforms and make your complaints anytime you have any of those challenges? The conversation has been around market implications of the MYTO, that's the Multi-Year Tariff Order, for the conversation today on Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. And this is where we end today's edition of Electricity Town Hall on the network service of Radio Nigeria. And I've been speaking with the Principal Manager, Economic Regulation Division of NERC, Dr. Muhammad Yadudu. A Senior Manager, also from the Economic Regulation Division of the Commission, Mr. Onua Bonika, and the Deputy Manager, Economic Regulation Division, also of the Commission, Mrs. Blessing Kaigama. Thank you all for your insightful contributions this evening and for coming to the program.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciation to the production team, Studio Manager Phineas Odoyo, Facilitator Conrad Labi, Producer Sunday Goche. Special thanks to our Executive Producer Nsushima Ki. I am David Umoru. See you next Monday for another interesting edition of Electricity Town Hall. Goodbye.